But first, a bombshell revelation from The Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg, the magazine's editor-in-chief, penning an article on how he was mistakenly included in a group chat by the U.S. National Security Advisor on the messaging app Signal. Now, in the chat was the head of the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the U.S. Secretary of State, and Defense, as well as the U.S. Vice President. Upcoming plans for a military strike on Houthi targets in Yemen were discussed. Now, today, top U.S. intelligence leaders are testifying about global threats to the United States. That testimony comes as the Trump administration scrambles to contain the fallout from the Atlantic article. Let's take a listen now to that testimony taking place.
Security, and if so, on what other topics?
Thank you for your question, Senator. Not that I can recall.
Okay. Question I have for you, Director Gabbard, involves this question of Elon Musk wasn't going to see the military's China war plans because he said he, quote, has business in China and he would be susceptible perhaps to that. That was his comment. So as DNI, you're responsible for security clearance policies across the government. Under your watch, how are you going to go about carrying out this obligation? Because I think it obviously is a very significant one in terms of American national security.
Thank you, Senator. As you know, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence provides oversight over these different 18 intelligence elements. Leaders within those elements are empowered with that responsibility to uphold the trust that the American people have placed in them. In this example that you've cited, both Secretary Hegseth as well as President Trump completely
Now, France 24's Fraser Jackson was listening to that testimony, and we can go across to him now. Fraser, good morning to you. What came out of it during the Q&A which you listened to?
Well, this is still ongoing, of course, but the main takeaway is that the Democrats are really pushing for answers on this signal leak, and the Republicans are going forward as though it's business as usual. They are still asking questions about the global threat assessment that the intelligence community has made, but the Democrats want answers as to how this national security leak could have taken place. Tulsi Gabbard, the director for national intelligence, got a grilling from Mark Warner, the highest-ranking Democrat on the committee. She refused to say whether she had been involved in that chat at the very outset, said that it was still being investigated by the White House. But John Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA, was more forthcoming. He said that it was him that was involved in that. And he also said that it was permissible under the White House counsel's guidelines for Signal to be used for work purposes, provided any decisions that are made through Signal then go through the formal channels. He said, quote, it is entirely permissible and lawful, and it didn't involve classified information. Tulsi Gabbard was asked whether there was any classified information. She said there wasn't. Mark Warner said, well, if there are no classified information included in these text messages, then you should share those text messages with the committee. And Gabbard so far has declined to do so. The FBI was asked about whether they were investigating this as well. Kash Patel, the director, said that he'd been made aware of this leak late in the evening on Monday, and that there was no updates from the FBI as of yet. So there are still more questions coming their way. This is going to be a grilling that they get from multiple members of the intelligence group here, but Gabbard and Ratcliffe so far not really giving much away.
Because when the U.S. president was asked about this yesterday, Donald Trump seemed to have been caught off guard.
Yeah, Donald Trump said to my colleagues here that he had not heard about this and that the questions from the reporter was the first that he was hearing about this, which then raises some questions of its own. If that is indeed true and Donald Trump had not heard about this, then why had his national security team not told him about this, considering that the Atlantic had definitely reached out to members of the National Security Council and the national security apparatus to basically verify that this was indeed a real signal group. So that therefore does raise raised some questions as to whether the president was being kept out of the loop there, or is it Donald Trump, trying to distance himself from this story? We know now that he has spoken to NBC News in a phone call this morning, and he played down reports that Mike Waltz was coming under fire for this, despite Mike Waltz being the one who had added Jeffrey Goldberg to this group chat. He said Michael Waltz has learned a lesson and he's a good man. Trump said that it was one of Michael's people who added Goldberg to the Signal chat. He said, quote, a staffer had his number on there. Trump was then asked by NBC whether he was frustrated that this story had leaked, and he said that the incident was, quote, the only glitch in 2 months, and it turned out not to be a serious one, adding that Goldberg's presence in the group chat had no impact at all on the strike on the Houthis. But it should be noted that it's arguable that that is only because of Goldberg's journalistic integrity and lack of publishing of the story before the strikes happened, that there was indeed no impact on this operation on the 15th of March.
Fraser, it does seem like this is the first big major embarrassment for the Trump administration since Donald Trump came back to power. What is the likelihood that Democrats really jump on this case, because they have been struggling to find their footing since he's come back to power?
Yeah, the Democrats have kind of been in disarray, really. They technically don't really have a leader at the moment, and there's a bit of different factioning going on at the Democrats, but they will be trying to use this as a stick to beat the administration with. But the administration so far is remaining tight-lipped. The president today has no public events scheduled at the moment. He's going to be having a lunch with J.D. Vance, which is customary for the president and vice president to do every so often. This is likely to be brought up in that luncheon, and then we are told that the president will be signing some executive orders later in the day. At the moment, though, that is closed to the press. We're waiting for that to be opened up. But right now, the feeling from my colleagues here at the White House, my press colleagues, is that the administration is trying to lay low and to let the dust for the story blow over.